Okay, we are officially live. Hey, everybody, good morning. I was running a little slow. I'm sorry. Holding up the show here. Let me know. I'm looking. It's just me again. My brother has helped me so many times, but he just has a busy life. That's all. Just busyness. No other reason than that. Not able to make it again, but he's gonna be back. I'm always trying to rope people in. Hey, you want to help me on the live stream? Want to help me on the but I guess I didn't do too well this week. Anyway, good to see you, Jonathan, America, Marcy, Jules. We got familiar names on the chat this morning. A whole bunch I didn't say here. Good having you tune in from your different parts of the country, of the world. I see Ekaterina from Ekaterina from Romania. Very good to have you here. Part of the show here is butchering people's names. That's the fun of it. All right, I'm going to paint. This is last week's study, and the subject was, how to paint a million of something. When you have a texture, you need to do a million of the same thing. I think that's worth visiting a little bit more today. How to do a lot of an item like a texture, because so often in painting we need to do hair, we need to do grass, we have to do leaves, or somewhere there's just so many. Those techniques are good. And I feel like this looks like a bunch of aspen leaves. Aspen, it's the tall straight white trunk with the yellow leaves. We have, maybe a good representation of those, but I did the ground cover. Then I pretty much just covered my entire base coat after doing that. So it's worth looking at a little bit more, how to gradually build. What if you needed to do a giant pile of something? Sherry, thank you. Thank you for being here this morning. I admire your painting so much. Thank you. That's very nice. I always have to watch out, it's fun looking at everybody talk to each other in the chat. Sometimes the comments not even directed at me. Hey, that's a beautiful painting. It's just you're talking to somebody in the chat, not even talking to me, and then I look at it, I'm like, oh, thank you very much. Anyway, that can happen. All right, I got the app ready. So if we get on my computer, I got my email open. You can see here my screen, and we've got. I saw Jules mentioning in the comments that she sent in some cat pictures. Look, there we have it. Beautiful work. Look at that cat. And so if anybody wants to send in work, the email is in the description. Send your work and I'll give you as much feedback as I'm able, and we'll really focus on that today. So I'll do as many pictures as I can. Let me know on the email. I started using an email instead of just a folder to drop things in, because I want you to be able to give me a message if you have specific things that you'd like to talk about. All right, let's look at this cat. Beautiful eyes. Wow, man, I love the way you did those eyes. Such good work. This is something that gets missed a lot in artwork. And hey, Joe from Ireland says Irish art. All right, thanks. I got distracted. I got the comments over to the left. Eyes. Okay, this is beautifully done, because in painting, it's easy to, when you highlight something, to lose the color. And if you lose the color here, then you lose the effect. This is light that's illuminating this eye. And so that brightness of color is very well done, because then the pure white reflection looks like a separate layer of reflection. I had this saying, I like to tie things together. I like to say, and that's just like this. So it helps me remember. In this process, I also wanted the look of natural illuminated objects. So I had one color that's my very bright saturated yellow instead of blue in this case. And then my pale white reflections. I did it on my brown layer at first, and then I also did it with my yellow layers. I think this has been so helpful to me in my painting is understanding those three different kinds of colors. You have there's more than three, I'm sure, but these three are just very helpful to have memorized. That you have your shadow. Coming out of the shadow can be a very saturated color that looks like light is filling it up from within, filling up the whole thing. And then the loss of color as it gets lighter creates a glare or a reflection, something that looks like the surface of some like water. Now let's go back to this cat. I heard you talking about the whiskers. Excellent work on the whiskers. Beautiful. I love it. That is just fantastic work. Let's see if there's some other let's see if we sent some other things here. All right, we got another picture. Here, look. Oh, the reference. Beautiful. And I see right away that you enhanced the blue of those eyes. Very nice. So this really proves my point that the bright spot in the photo is so colorful compared to the shadow, which is not, I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong at all with the way you enhanced that, but there's an amount of enhancement that works. Finding the right amount is the key component. So very well done. Nice bright blue eyes. I like how I did the blue shadow too. That's a nice enhancement of color on that shadow. Here you just have the gray shadows, and I like how you enhanced the color of the shadows. Just gives it a fun, contrasting, vibrant look. I don't know how you would define that, but it's a nice look. Good job. All right, beautiful work. Let's see. I love the way this nose glows. Let's see if you captured the glow of the nose. That's something that you could really capture more. So let's look at this. I just want to point out how much color is in the shadow of this nose. And the reason there's so much color is because light is hitting this far side, getting filtered and shining through into the shadow. So this happens on skin tone all the time, and it's easy to miss. I'm going to show you how we can enhance that and hopefully, be a small improvement on the picture. Let's see if we can do that. Let me open my color app. Give me a second here to pull it off of the, I'm going to open it off of my desktop. Here, the color app, we're going to go here. Let's try this version. I'm always working on it. So sometimes I destroy it right before a show. Okay, we've got this color app. We're going to see if this works. I've got it loaded in here. And so we're going to put this right in the middle. I'm on a touch screen, so you won't see my mouse floating around. And so let's put that green set button, and that puts the image in place. And then I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to get a color here that is like that nose. We're going to go real bright like this. Let's see what that color looks like. Let me get the right line size too. Okay, we go into that nose. Right in here, we're going to put this real set. Okay, that might feel like cheating a little bit, like maybe you don't even have that kind of intense color. So forgive me if this does feel a little bit a little bit overboard because your painting probably don't even have a primary color that bright when it comes to the orange. So we'll try to be fair and dull that down a little bit here. Let's go a little more gray. Make it not as intense so that perhaps it's more like the your natural paints. Okay, then let's use the smear tool like this, and we're just going to make it get darker. Now see how there's a loss of color where this blends? I've got an algorithm on here that's designed to simulate paint, and you really lose color intensity where you blend two things together. But probably it doesn't matter a lot in this case. This just shows how important it is to keep color. In blending, the transitions are the trouble areas. Those are the problem areas. All right, so we've got a glow going on the nose, but that gradient is weird. It just has this abrupt stop. So I'm going to see if I can take the, oh, I can't do that. Let's just put the line size smaller. Let's see if I can do that. Let's get a transition color on this. Okay, we're here. We had an orange. Let's get something that's a little darker, grayer right here. Oh, we need the pencil tool. Ah, that's why it wasn't working. Let's go a little darker like this, and we'll keep that color saturation. There we go. See that color? This is what we want when we do that gradient. Let me look at your photo reference again. Let me look at this. Ah, beautiful picture. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I want to get that. I want to capture that gradient right there, so we get less light as we go there to the left. All right. Let's go over here and trying to remember where that thing is. Okay, let's blend it. We go here, we go darker. Now I've got my mid-tone. Good testament to the helpfulness of a mid-tone, putting that deeper red in there. There we go. Let's just kind of scribble that in like this. Let's really make it gradual. I don't want the appearance. Ah, and I just noticed this. See this color here? Notice how gray and dark purple that looks in comparison to this one here. This one looks like light is coming from within. And then this, let me zoom in on that. See, that saturated color goes all the way up. So if I go over here and saturate that color all the way up, I don't know if this is going to work. Let me see if I can swatch this color. Okay. And then go all the way up here. There we go. Okay. There we go. That's our look. Okay. Then we have the light coming in that. Oh, it's not the best. I have to admit that's not the best. Let's work on it a little bit more. Let's get that blender. All right. I'm going to just try to be a little more graceful with my gradient. And then this shadow on the edges of shadows, you don't want to have a real dark edge on the edge of a shadow. So we're going to make that light color go all the way to the edge like that. I have the feeling that I just got a little too excited and made it go too far. We want that bright glow. Ah, there we go. Now we're getting a little bit more light in it. I wouldn't blame you for saying this isn't working. You might look at this picture and that I'm trying to blend just like that photo reference and think, yeah, good thing I didn't do that with my paint, because that looks kind of weird. It looks like it has a bloody nose or something. And so this is an example of needing other things to have tell the same story. So I adjusted this, but there's more to the picture that I didn't. So in the end, what I have to do, since the whole picture is not calibrated to those colors. See, these colors are in this image, in this photo, they're more gray. So if I go here, look at that photo reference, you can see that these are real primary bright colors, but we go here. Well, I'm trying to use that same primary bright color while the rest are dimmer. So the short story is I went to extreme. It's just to extreme. That's all. It doesn't mean that the effect is bad. And I think this also is something that's worth developing, is that judgment that saves you from a lot of heartache and can say it's the right track, it's the right effect, it's just too extreme. You know, I think that that's a real helpful thing to be able to do. Okay, we're going to kill the intensity of that color. All right, let's check it out now. All right. I still don't love it. Let's check out the photo reference right there. Let's get more of the red going across the bottom of the shadow like that. Man, I might just have to brighten the nose. Let's go like this. Blend some of this color up here. Here we go. Okay, let's put some bright color on the nose. Let's go here and maybe here. Let's try this out. Oh, let's go way up here. Here we go. Let's get some of that bright color. Oh man. Let's go back to that. Let's see if this tests my theory. This is kind of funny, you know, because I really feel genuinely caught off guard by how that didn't just come together. You know, I start painting. Sometimes it works out fantastic. Other times I got to wrestle with it for a little bit. It's like I know something is true, but that doesn't make it all come together right away. Okay, now we've got the light showing. We got the light source on that nose. So we got two things telling the same story, and that's good. But once again, I think I made it a bit extreme. So we're going to darken that down. We'll kind of blend this color in. Let's get a little bit smaller brush tool so we can blend this. It's kind of fun to toy around with these. Let's go here. All right, there we go. We darkened it down. I'm going to stop there. You know, at this point, I feel like I'm just copying the photo, waiting for it to look just like the photo. I think it's good for you to see that these things don't always just work for me too. Sometimes I wrestle with it and it doesn't come together just as I planned. But don't lose faith in the effect. So if I undo it all, then we can see the before and after. Let's see what happens if I undo it all. Let's just keep hitting the undo button. We got the nose real bright. That is an interesting, even though the nose is unnaturally bright, it does cause that color to make more sense. You know. Okay, let's keep undoing. Let's go back to the original faded color. Now I kind of like it when it's real bright like that. It's almost like dulling down the color made it worse. You know, when I do that, I kind of feel like I should have stayed with the bright one. No, let's keep undoing. Look at the process. We're taking it off. Well, this has been a fun study. There we go. Now we're back to the original dark paint color on there. And we take out my mid-tone. We take out my primary color. There we go. Now the truth is, your nose looks fantastic. Nothing wrong with that at all. So you can judge. You can judge how much that is worth it. I really love making things look like they glow. All right. Thanks for sharing this, Kat. Thank you for bearing with me while I try to add that lighting effect to the nose. Well done. Let's see what else we got in here. Let's look at this. We've got also, let's close this out. Oh, we got more cat whiskers. This original, yeah, any idea on the whiskers? Oh, well, we might as well look at it. Here, let's just open it. We don't have to do a long session. All right, light shadows is the only thing I would add. I remember in your painting, You know, we like to use shadows to make things 3D, but just like when you're painting a cloud, if you make the shadows dark, then it makes the material heavy, and you want the whiskers to look light and illuminated. So you might just lighten the shadows. That's just a quick tip on that. Right, see there, you didn't put the, oh, that's kind of fun to see the progress. Okay, so let's go back to this one and look at those whiskers again. See, I see dark shadows. I'm just going to suggest that you get a little brush and really lighten those shadows, because a little goes a long way. And then they'll look like a more lightweight material, more translucent material. Okay, beautiful work, beautiful cat. I love it. Very nice. If anybody else wants to send something in, oh yeah, I forgot. Here's a good picture from. Here's a good picture from Tyler. Not a painting, just a reference. He said, this kind of looks like the leaves you paint sometimes. Wow, that's pretty fun. You got that deer out there just hiding in the, I wonder what kind of plant that is. I don't know what that is. Big old broad leaves. It's very fun because you can see the three colors. The three colors I talked about, the darkest shadow, the midtone with the most color, the highlight that has the decolored reflection. So look at those three things. We can always identify. This is just a very good model for that. So if I zoom in right here, I can see my brightest green on that leaf. Now that is a leaf that light is shining through. We're seeing light come through from the other side. And you can see this very gray light color that appears like reflection because it has no color. That's why it looks like that. It's because the color is lost. So I can make a texture like this. Boy, that's kind of a fun thing, isn't it? You know, you can just make a texture like that so quick by putting those colors together and not even thinking about where the leaves are. Let's just throw it together. That's kind of a fun, I like this. This is inspiring, Tyler. I like that texture. We could do it with any color too. Watch this. We can go over here and let me get a good brush. Looks like I left this brush out and paint dried in it. One moment here. Let's get a couple of these. Okay, I like that. So here we can do the same thing. We can put the, we don't even need those same colors. Let's go, yeah, let's just make the same colors because that's kind of fun to do that. You know, here's a workflow to get that same look. All right, we can get green with yellow and black. No problem. Let's put black on here. That's going to create our green, a real nice earthy green, not a super bright one. It ends up being real good for landscapes. Yellow and black makes a great green. You can always enhance it with brighter greens later. Oh, whoops. Sorry, guys. My camera is not on. Oh, let's turn that on. Sorry about that. No memory card. It's okay. We don't need one. All right. I don't know why that turned off. That was my mistake. Okay. Yeah, the screen did black out. Thank you for telling me. I see that. All right. Yellow, black makes a great green. And then we'll need a white. I've got some in a pan right here. That's all we need. Those three. We can get those three colors that we saw. So I'll make a whole bunch of leaves in a field with that same pattern. All right. We could do any color first. I'll do black first. We're going to go across here. Let's, you know, it'd be kind of fun to make this tree coming out of some green. Let me zoom in. Yeah. On the subject of doing many of something, you know, we'll try to make many green leaves, modify our scene here a little. I'm trying to get as much of the picture in view as we can. There we go. Let's put black on it. And let's put yellow and that's going to turn to green. So when I use the yellow and black method, as opposed to a pre-mixed green that I could also make from yellow and black, just a couple strokes on a patch. Here's 2 patches of yellow, right? I go over them a couple more times. Now they're green. It doesn't take long at all for those to turn green. Okay, random brush strokes. I've worked for a long time on trying to get a brush stroke technique that gives me all directions quickly. You know, it seems like a silly, simple thing, but it actually can be quite a challenge to get what feels like a natural randomized direction pattern, you know, if you know what I mean. Okay, all they are is strokes. It actually looks better the fewer strokes you can do and still distribute your colors, the better it looks, because you lose gradients as you brush. This is, I think, an important aspect of a technique like this. Is something that maybe doesn't get noticed is that this stroke has an important characteristic, and that is its gradient. And the more I go over that stroke, the less it becomes a gradient and the more it becomes a solid color and becomes less three-dimensional, because that gradients instantly look three-dimensional compared to solid, unchanging colors. So when you put that mid-tone or bright color or highlight, whatever it is, when you put it on there and you're just making a texture, this doesn't apply to everything because sometimes you really need details. The fewer times I hit it, the more I maintain a gradient. And again, I'm not trying to say a right way, just trying to identify a pattern that really consistently delivers good results. Okay, there's green, here's some black, and I'm doing smaller shapes to try to get some perspective in there. Let's do this. I couldn't resist it, Tyler. You said it looks like something I might paint. Here I am trying to live up to it and do this. If anybody else has work you want me to look at, send it in. share@muraljoe.com. I'll take another look before we're done here. Smaller shapes, that's all I'm doing. Shapes that are perhaps more squished this way as I get up toward the top. All right, before that all dries, there's still a little bit. I forgot to do my last step. I'm just enjoying my process here. All right, pure white. And I can go straight to the canvas with it, and that'll be one look. I'm going to go like above the color. So anywhere there's a color patch, see this is a color patch right above it, great place to put a dab of white. But I don't want it to be white, so I'm going to put a few on above colorful areas, and then I'm going to go over them a couple more times. And it's just a quick way if you're trying to put together a texture with so quickly, different directions, getting those long, skinny shapes. See, I go over them. Now the paint got dry. It dried out, and I wasn't able to keep blending. So I might work in a smaller patch for future reference to have an easier time making those. I get more cleaner lines if I go wet on wet. Okay, now I'll premix. We'll premix that reflection color because this is all pretty dry here. So we'll get plenty of that color. I'm just going to go like this. See, here's a green patch. Look, the top of a leaf will instantly appear when I just go zoop, like that. Underside has the light coming through it. Same thing with this one. See this bright color? I can make the top on the left side, on the right side, just on the very top. Let's just make a little top curling over. That's all it is. So it's that combination of dark, saturated, desaturated reflection. Of course, a lot more can be added in, but that bare minimum basic setup gets you this immediate look of many objects that are three-dimensional. So we're just putting these in. Now at this point, I just kind of randomly threw them in so that I can get a deeper texture. It looks like I could use a little bit more exposure on the camera. Let me see. I'm going to brighten up the image because I think I'm seeing a bit more color on this end than you are. Let's give it just a bit more like this. There we go. All right, now it doesn't have to be a wet on wet. It doesn't have to be all in one pass. So I can come back to a texture like this and mix any one of these colors. So let's go to the midtone and just add some more of it in there because maybe there's details you want to work on. So you get your green, however you made that. Hopefully there's not a bunch of white in my brush. I'm just going to put it wherever I see room. You know, there's room right there for a little stroke of the mid-tone. Room right here because this is a shadow area. I can put little leaves in the shadow. So it doesn't have to all come together for you on that first pass. It doesn't have to be wet on wet like I just did it. It really, the only requirement here is the criteria of the color pattern. That's what I'm really focusing on, is the color pattern. So you can quickly do texture with so many. Now, to prove the concept, why don't we have some fun changing the color? Let's make it a different color of leaves. Let's make now some red leaves. Let's say we've got ourselves a big field of red leaves. We're going to put red in here, and then we'll do black. Okay, we're going to just bury this tree. And here, let's get lots of our bright red. This is coming out into the light, so we're going to need some real bright red. Like this, okay. And, you know, let's transition that red. That might be kind of fun to do like a gradient. We're going to get creative here. Here's same texture, red and black. We're going to do a whole bunch of red. Maybe they're poinsettias. Maybe that's what we're looking at. Let's do some orange in here. We'll start transitioning that color toward that green. Here we have orange. We've got a little bit of a clogged up tip on my orange here. Hang on. We'll get that solved. Here, just pour some of this. And then we put some of this, and then we'll want some. Oh, we already got the yellow. Okay, so let's go to our picture. And here we have orange. Let's go back to the yellow like that, and then do little bits of black in here. This is just color. It's all just changing color, but see, I can categorize this as, even though it's a whole bunch of colors, I can keep track of this as being one kind of color in my texture. It's the midtone. It's that color that gets illuminated by the light source. Okay, now black is going to go across the whole thing, make my shadows. Now I have my dark shadow, I have my color. All right, now I'm going to rinse my brush and start putting my pale highlight color. I'll just use white because I want the white to pick up all of the different colors I have in here. Okay, here's white. Top, you know, generally I'm aiming for above my colors. You see, so it's not just getting the right shade of green or the right shade of yellow, or it's not the right color. It's having a pattern in place that represents this natural pattern of reflection, shadow, illumination. How would you I think I need help with it. I've never really tried to articulate the things in order. I've talked about it a lot, but it's nice when you organize things, isn't it? So we could say shadow, midtone, and highlight is commonly used, and it is that, but there's a way to better describe the way it's organized. It's the shadow, the illuminated color, and the reflection color. In water, I call it, the deep illuminated color would be the underwater color. And then I would just call the white the reflection color. Oh, there we go. We got some changing leaves right there. We have different colors. All right, let's put more shadow back here. Here we want less of that color, so less light illuminating it in the shadow of the tree. I see a shadow here. Let's just go like this and not allow as much of that midtone to be bright red. We could actually keep a whole bunch of the reflection color. The color that needs to disappear is that midtone, because that's what gets illuminated. But we might still have tons of reflection from other light sources. So to make a shadow in here, watch, I'm just going to kill the midtones. There we go. Now we've got a shadow of the tree. I don't need to kill the reflections. I don't need those to go away. Let's restore some of them back in there. There, and we'll go over those. This is a subtle way to put a shadow through a texture like this, just understanding what the light's doing. All right, now I'm going to blend more of those colors together. This is kind of fun. Here's my yellow and black. Let's get more of the yellow and black. I want these to look like they're all one piece going on. All one field or whatever I don't know what to call it. It's so abstract, I don't know what to call it. Let's put some orange as it starts to move toward a red down here. Again, doing color. Boy, we're having fun today, aren't we? There's my reflections. All I'm doing is putting white across the tops of those colors. It picks up some of my shadow. That's what makes it more gray, by the way. It's with this technique, it's what makes it more gray is that it picks up the shadow color. So the wet on wet ends up working nicely for that. Okay, there we are. It's just a trick. That's all it is. Just a trick to make it look like we've got a deep texture of so many of those leaves. Let's put another color in there just for funsies. What should we do next? We got red. We've got green. Wouldn't it be cool to have blue? What if we had bright blue leaves? What if you had that? Okay. We'll go like this. Let's zoom out here. There we go. That's wild looking. Strange picture. Let's put some blue. All right. Color. We could do color then black, or we could do black then color. Your choice. And it might be fun to transition that blue to the red using a purple. So here's some purple. I'll add some red to that purple. If you go straight from blue to red, you'll get a very gray purple. That's why I didn't do that. Using a bright purple because I like colors. Colors are fun. So to keep that color vivid, bright, I used the purple to blend the blue to the red. Okay, now let's put some black shadows in there. Boy, we need some light in this one. So the blue is a very dark primary color. So maybe I want to brighten that midtone. No problem. So I'm just going to add I'm just going to add a step where I'm focusing on the midtones with a clean brush, trying to stay off of the black. Oh, whoops. Sorry, you've been looking at my tray the whole time. My bad. Same technique, blue. I put purple in here to mix with the red, just like I did these. I just threw purple in. Sorry, I did that one. Okay, now I'm going to go like this. And this is not that reflection color. This is going to the midtones, and you can see how that blue is going to light up. So when you're doing a wet on wet technique, you can do this. I'm staying on my colors, off of the black. See, in this bright color, this white will illuminate that midtone. So I can just go through a whole texture that I recently laid down, brightening it. There's an amount of white that can be added where the color stays intense. There's a tipping point where it starts to lose its saturation, but we have not hit that tipping point, so we're still good. Here's where I put the purples. Let's see if we can draw out some of the, here, I'll add a bit more. It started to dry. There we go. There's purple staying in the midtones. Let's put some of that. Let's put some red on that. Blend it in. There, we got our midtones restored. We've got shadows in there. Let's throw a few more shadows in here. Just black. We kind of lost some of the dark shadows in this spot. I'm always just looking for those three things. I categorize them and look for them. Now we're going to do reflection. Okay, let's just get white. And here is where we're going to really get some more grayish colors. Let's just start putting that more gray color near the tops of, here we'll pre-mix a little to make sure that it's, that primary blue has a way of just illuminating that white. I want it to stay nice and gray. Okay, I'm adding black to it just to make sure that these stand apart. We don't want these reflection colors to look overly blue. I really want those to look gray. Black and white, just black and white. Put some in there. There. Now we got our deep texture. Yeah, it's not the best. You know, there's things on this one that I didn't do so well. It's fun to talk about what I didn't do so well, isn't it? Here, let's see if we can adjust. Let's go in here. I have some things that don't fit into the categories so well. My colors blurred together. So here I don't see the difference between midtone, shadow, and highlight. So let's go back to step one, midtone. Step two, shadow. You know, course correcting is a valuable thing. I guess that's why I'm thinking it's good to take the time to do that. There, put some shadows. I got some midtones. Now I want a very colorless highlight. Let's get this gray. You know what we could do is add a little bit of orange to make sure the blue stays out. Just now thought of it. You can use red too. Red is different enough that it'll keep the blue out. See this? This right here will make that a nice gray reflection. See, it's that gray, it's that absence of the midtone is probably a better way to say it, that really makes this stand apart as that surface. It's that color that's up on the surface and reflecting. Okay, enough of this. We've been doing this a long time. We can do every color of the rainbow, have some fun, get our 3D texture with midtone, highlight, midtone, illumination, and reflection. Let's do this. Let's make sure this tree gets nice and buried in this texture. I want to make it growing out of it. Okay, then we'll get white. See, the red, when you add white to red, it almost immediately loses its intensity. So I don't have that same problem that I do with the blue. But the blue, just the nature of that pigment is it will saturate typically with, they're not all the same. That's a phthalo blue that does that. Some blues you add white and they don't have that effect. So, you know, you got to work with the paint that you've got. You got to maybe be familiar with that. But I just eyeball it. Whatever I'm working with, I just look at it and decide, does it need to be more saturated? Does it need to be darker, lighter? There, that one has less. See how illuminated that looks because of how much of the red that got left in the mix. That red really causes it to have a glow in the context of the rest of the picture. Boy, we could even enhance that with some orange and yellow here. Let's really make light blasting through this. It's on the front side of the tree, so you know it'll cause it to make sense. Wherever I have the red, I could put orange and just really make it glow. And then I can even go to a yellow on top of the orange. So if you were doing explosions, fire, just anything red, a big tree, big autumn leaf scene, you might use that same strategy. Just get the light to really burst through it. Okay. Now, just because we're here, I might as well talk about this. And I'm taking a break, looking back at the computer screen. Just reading the comments. Yeah, Mavis, it is indeed instructive to look at what doesn't work. Yeah, I find myself constantly doing that. You know, like in theory, I'm like, I know this should work in theory. And, you know, then I put it on the canvas, and that's when I learned the nuance, you know, the understanding the larger pattern. But one thing that I just want to preach all day long, because it's so important to me, is don't lose faith in the patterns when you encounter, like with the cat's nose. That was an excellent example. I didn't nail that, and that's fine. I'm really just very okay with that, because I am not trying to maintain a reputation of any kind of greatness. I'm trying to show value of patterns. And so that just demonstrates, you know, the important truth of the matter, that I have that stage where I need to identify the pattern, but it needs like calibration, I guess. You know, I have to, you know, there's little things that can be off, and that's part of that process. So many of the techniques I use have gone through that, me finding ways to do them that don't work great, but I still see the pattern in nature, so I don't give up on using it. All right, now this concept: illuminated color, reflected color, shadow color. I want to use that to make this tree go down into this texture. I'm going to take a shadow color, and I'm going to make sure that that shadow color is on the surface of the tree by making sure it doesn't get too colorful. If it gets too brown, my tree becomes translucent, like there's light in it. So here is an example. Let's add orange. Here's an example of a shadow that is going to end up looking like I've got light coming through. It almost looks like light coming out of a hole in the tree right now. Just the color instantly creates light. So I don't want that. I need to, that's not what I'm after on this example. Okay, so I added black. I take the color down. Now I'm going to bring it up, and then I'm going to do a gradient to my existing colors. I've got yellows in there. I kind of did those by putting yellow on top of brown. So we'll put those in here. and maybe get some white. Okay, let's do that. I'm trying to just match the colors using that dabbing technique with the brush, keeping it laid down sideways. All right, now I'll gradually bring that light color down to my dark color, and being mindful of how saturated that shadow is makes this tree, it makes a surface shadow. It's the trunk of the tree, the surface of it going down into these shadows. And so that's the very practical purpose of saturated color in my shadow. It's telling me how much light is illuminating my object from within. So I'm going to put a little more on this side. Now this one's a little different. I want a whole bunch of red light on this shadow. So I'm going to put red. So this saturated color is unrelated. It's not as related to the tree because it's got the saturated color of the light source. So this is different. This is adding color to a shadow on top of it, you know. So this is adding a red shadow in order to make it look like the red leaves are shining on this tree. See how I have that dark shadow? So now the tree goes down. Now let's put some gradient to it. Let's put some of that yellow. I'm just trying to match, once again, the color I started with. Let's put yellow on there to get the orangey brown. Here we are. Maybe some, I got a little bit of too bright of a yellow. Let's take the, you know what, I've got some purple. Purple and yellow. Purple will take it out. Purple and yellow will make brown. There we go. I think that's how I made the tree now that I think about it. I'm trying to remember. All I'm trying to do right now is create a gradient of my existing sunlit tree bark. You know, I'm not nailing it, but you can see my intentions. That's what I care about. Let's put some yellow on there. Okay, now the gradient goes down, 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 down. Now, if I were to illuminate this tree and make the tree itself glow, I would not use such a deep, like, what is that color? Just a deep maroon, a very red, a dark red shadow. I would use a color that relates to the tree, something more orange, more yellow. But to make this look like this isn't being influenced by a different light, I'm adding the red. So here, let's put some of that. Let's put a little bit more of the black, a little bit more of the red right here, there. And I'm just keeping it dark enough. So now this bright red becomes a shadow being cast on. So I wouldn't, you know, when you're looking at a picture, you can categorize these colors, different kinds of colors. Let's put that red in some of these shadows too. We just have light shining on the shadow itself. It gets projected onto it, and we'll perceive that instantly when we look at the context of the picture, if it matches. Or better yet, if the color in the shadow doesn't match the what's in the highlight, we don't like relate them. Now, to prove my point, I'm going to saturate another shadow, but this shadow is going to be light coming through this tree trunk. So I'm going to put a hole in the tree trunk. Okay, let's put a hole where an animal lives, right there on the back side. I'm putting it on the back side because I want to put some light coming through. And I've got the light shining on this side. There we go. There's a hole in the tree trunk. Now, if I put red or blue or green, it's not going to have the same effect based on these highlights. It might still look like there's a glow if I set up the gradients right. There's exceptions to everything, but I want to show a real clear pattern. I'm going to put an orange that is more the expected color of this tree. And then I'm going to put some yellow in there too. I'll bend it toward, yeah. Let's do like a dark yellow orange. We're going to add a bunch of light inside of this. Now it has to get dark enough that it looks like a shadow. So I have to darken it, but I'm trying to make as saturated of a shadow as I can. Now this is where a brown pigment might be real helpful. A dark orange is a brown, and so this is where if you have an actual brown pigment, then it may give you more color in your shadow than mixing black with an orange, because a dark with a light loses color. So, well, just a tip. If you really want the most saturated brown, it may be better with just brown paint. There, gradient. It's darker as it moves away from the light. It's the extreme saturation relative to the other things, and that's going to dry darker, and you know, so that's what's going to cause my hole to look like it has light in it. All right, then let's put you know, we can put a little edge on it here. Let's put a dark edge to make it a little more 3D, where the light, if the light's coming from inside, it's not going to shine on that little edge as much. So I'll make sure that I show that dark edge on there. And you know, maybe just for effect, we'll put a few you know, perspective lines. Let's do some little squished together lines. Let's space them out as we go into the tree, maybe closer together here. Just little suggestions. I don't know if that made any difference in the picture, but you know, right. See, so there's light in that tree now. I don't know why there would be light. You know, that's one see-through tree to have that much light. Let's have some fun though and put some more light. Maybe a little fairy lives in this hole. Let's put some twinkly little lights coming out of it. Let's do that. Boy, now that we've got that set up, let's have some fun here. Let's put a pure white. We'll just say that's exactly what it is. This is a little fairy living in the tree, in the magic field of colorful leaves. I'm putting the white where I already have the color, like that, to get it to really glow. There. So, you know, how to separate the kinds of lights and shadows we're looking at has to do with which ones are saturated, which ones are not. That pattern has been extremely helpful to me. I wonder what would look like if I did a little dab to soften that. Sometimes, like a little stamp with your finger is a way to make something more subtle, you know, without destroying the shapes that you've got. That was my thinking. How do I do it without destroying my shapes? Okay, I'm going to stop there, see what we've got going on in the email. I'm still looking at this cute little critter in the field. That's the inspiration. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate that. Oh, nice. America Marcy likes the cat. That was a good picture. Jules, very nice. Okay, we're gonna go back. We've got that. Let's see if we've got anything. Did anyone send something? Yeah, we got something from Mavis. Okay. Last week I submitted the first photo. Been working on it this week, but it's not done. Any feedback? Okay. Let's see what kind of feedback we can give. All right, here's picture number 1. Let's look at the next picture. Oh, nice 3D bushes. That's very cool. I like that a lot. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Let's look at this before and after a couple times. Yeah, very nice. Excellent work with those. Okay, my feedback is that a little goes a long way. Just like with my cat's nose, I have the feeling I overdid the effect and then was having trouble dialing it back. Little goes a long way. So you may not need, this is not a correction, just an idea. You may not need this much contrast to have that effect look great. You may not need to have that much highlight difference from shadow. You might be able to make them just very similar in color. But great job. These look excellent. I love that. And they go way back. Look at that. That is really good. Okay, transitioning. So this is where like the technical knowledge meets art. You know, finding a graceful way to transition from one texture to another. Let me give you a recommendation on transitioning these patches of bushes. I'm going to load this one because that's a great looking example. We'll do a couple things in the app on this. We'll go over here, say goodbye to that very cute kitty. Okay, let's just reload it. And then we'll put your picture in here, right there. And I want to suggest a way to transition. So a smaller bush from a distance. Boy, I can even see shadows on the ground on those beautiful work. See shadow down on the ground. Let me look at this. Yeah, and that's cool. And that's consistent with your light source here is on, I can see from these cliffs hitting the left sides of things. You got shadows on the right. Very cool. Nice work. Okay. So when you have in nature things in patches, this is just a natural pattern that is, oh, here, let me set this image. I forgot to hit the set button. Now we can zoom in and start drawing on it. Let's go here. I'm going to borrow your lighter shadow color, smaller bushes. I'm going to go all the way to the edge. There we go. Have lighter shadows because they're not blocking as much light, just like a smaller cloud has a lighter shadow. From a distance, the tiny details of branches and little points of a dark shadow, they all kind of average together. You have lighter shadows. So we can make these not look like such abrupt changes by taking a shadow that is somewhere between the non-shadow and the shadow, and just putting a few edge cases, some outliers. We're just going to spread them out. So these are just going to be a suggestion of bushes that are, you know, not as big, you know, for whatever reason they're going in this patch. It just isn't like a landscaped sharp cutoff. That's all. And so we'll take the darker color now. Let's get a little darker color. This version of this app's a little different than what's online at the moment, by the way, just in case you were wondering about that. Okay, here we go. Let's do maybe a little more color in that shadow. Here we go. Now I'm getting a little closer. I darkened it a bit. This one's going to be closer. Let's put a couple in there. Okay, there. See, I've got shadows, and the shadows get lighter, they get smaller. Now I'm going to take my highlight color right here. I'm going to use your highlight color right there. Let's use that. And let's make the line really tiny, not big. Right there. And we're going to put little highlights on top of these buggers. Like this. Okay. Now the intent is that it looks like yours, but forgive me if I fail to accomplish that. Just scribble in some of these highlights in, same as I do with the brush, just a couple dabs with the brush, it would be quicker. The idea is that it gives me a a soft transition to the areas where you don't have these. And sometimes, you know, when you're working with a brush, you just, while you're already in this dark color, you just dab, 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 dab until it kind of disappears out of your brush, and you'll get little half shadows. We'll just call them half shadows. Now I'm going to use the blender tool because these precise sharp lines just don't look great. Let's take that down, undo that last drag. Here we go. Let's kind of blend these across, blend this right here. Just making it not like a perfect little circle. That's all I'm doing, going across each one of these. It's kind of a fun thing to see what really doesn't look like much of anything, and then you zoom out and you have the illusion of having painted a whole bunch of little objects. Just making them not circle. You know, the circle is something that's like super distinct, shows up from a distance. It'll be a distraction from any kind of natural looking texture. Unless I was really trying to make pebbles. There we go. Okay, so when we zoom out, we can see, you know, this might be a helpful thing to create the look of naturally occurring patches on those areas here. I guess in the end, what I'm trying to show is that it doesn't have to be like either or. You know, it doesn't have to be either the shadow or the lighter color. Those little transitions, I'm just putting little dots of the black in there because I thought it might look good. There, and you can kind of bleed it out, and then you might just put, you know, an abstract technique of just dabbing some of these colors across the desert floor. They could be distant tufts of grass. If the colors are believable, imagination will fill in the blanks, right? I mean, that is just a really messy canvas full of color, but the pattern suggests, hey, that looks like a, you know, like a field of beans that I could walk through or something. You know, imagination fills in the blanks. So same thing here, you can just do little dabs across the desert floor. So here's a tip on the perspective as well. So when people see, you know, like if I looked up to illustrate my point, drawing of mountains. We're going to search drawing of mountains on a Google image search. And we're going to see that every drawing has steep walls. Okay, images. Let's just see what's out there. When people draw mountains, they draw them steep because, you know, something about just being human causes us to want to draw what we know and understand rather than the exact duplication, pixel for pixel, of what we see. We understand, oh, that's a steep mountain. We draw it steeper than it is. Look, every picture, every hand-drawn mountain. Here's a good one where somebody is kind of onto it. They're like, you know, hey, that one's not as steep. So well done. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong. There are very steep mountains. My point is that every mountain in the whole world is not like that. But when you see a drawing, it always has very steep. And to further illustrate, children's drawings, you know, just looking at something less practiced, less trained, something more honest. What child draws low slopes on their mountains? Do you see the pattern? So I've seen this over and over, and all the way into our adult years, this tendency stays with us, this tendency to look at angles, curves in perspective, and to overslope them. I do it. I'm telling you that I do this. It's not trying to say that you're broken. it's just a natural tendency. It's just what we do for whatever reason. So with perspective, we see a slope, we slope it more. It's just a natural reaction. It's not absolute. There's exceptions to everything for sure. But if you key into this, it can really help to hone perspective, because perspective changes a lot with a little bit of slope. For example, in this, so the reason, Mavis, that I was saying that is because if we go back to your picture now, I'm going to ask the question, does this canyon slope this much? Does it slope that much that goes across here? I don't know the photo reference, and so there are certainly pictures where you do have zigzagging canyons and slopes. So I'm not saying right and wrong, but when you're going across a picture with a brush texture, if you do this, I just want to point out, let's just get a bright color that you can see. The angle of these brush strokes are like that, roughly. And then the angle of these are maybe roughly averaging this direction. So do you see how, so this has this general pattern that's down here, dips, comes up like this. It follows this slope. Now this is not, I'm not calling it wrong, but it exists here, and our eyes pick that up right away, and it may be creating a perspective that you're not intending. So being mindful of brush strokes going precisely the same direction when you want a texture. Well, averaging, let's change precisely to consistently averaging the same direction, because you may want a texture that's real natural and scrambled up. You just want to avoid accidentally creating a uniform direction that's not your intention. That's what I'm pointing out. Okay, so I'm saying perhaps you have a perspective thing going on here where the angles could give you a better perspective if you examine how steep those are. All right, so then I'll stop messing with this. That the progress on this looks amazing. I love the perspective that you put. I'm eager to see it slope up on the hill, seeing more of it get put together. Great job on the line. Look at that line going down, just disappearing. Man, that is cool. I love the way that looks. And your distant perspective on the desert looks fantastic. I love that. Okay. Let's see if we've got more pictures here. Hang on a second. Let's go to, here we go, inbox. Here we go. Okay, we don't have any others at the moment. And it's probably getting a little bit late. We're at 8:27. We got a few more minutes. We got a solid 10, 15. All right. I want to demonstrate that perspective thing. Okay. So only because I'm familiar with this pattern, whenever I do mountains, I'm going to default to a very, what do you call it? A very shallow angle, low slope. What's the opposite of a steep slope? I don't know the word. I'm going to make a slope that is not extreme. So let's just put some black and white, gray mountains. Let's do this like this. Now, what I want to demonstrate is not that this is not the right way to make mountains. It's not the right way. I just am pointing out that it's easy to misjudge your slopes. Misjudge them, especially when we see it three-dimensionally. See, I put a very, very level slope, but when I put highlights, when I put light and shadow, so let's make this like green hills. We'll put some yellow on there, and then we'll lighten it, get some sunlight hitting it. Now this is just to make it 3D. So in the middle, it's going to come more straight down because I'm imagining it being like a cone pyramid shape object. It's brighter here. I'm just putting random highlight patches. Okay, when it becomes 3D, the slope, the mountain looks like it's tall. I think that that's a thing. I guess I'm suggesting that. I don't know that that's true. Maybe for you it doesn't. But I think our three-dimensional understanding says tall, pointy mountain, and then we go to draw tall, pointy till it feels tall and pointy, and it's based on feeling, not measurement. So, common discrepancy and judgment there. It's kind of fun putting mountains in here. Let's put some more purplish shadows. Purple and yellow are just so fun. Okay, let's go like this. Let's put some purple. Let's do a real steep slope while we're on the subject. It's rare that I see a mountain. Maybe in Europe or maybe in other parts of the world, I see slopes that are steeper than a 45-degree angle, but I find it to be very uncommon. Perhaps you'll find otherwise. Okay, now I'm going to take yellow and use opposite coloring. It would be more of a green to get a true opposite to this purple to make it more gray. So black and yellow will give me green. There we go. Kills the intensity of my purple, makes it gray. Let's go like this. Steep slope, get the body of the mountain. Let's make a double peak right there. Let's really lighten it, make it look far away. Really far away mountain. Here we go. Lots of paint, because then I can just smear it around, get the shapes that I want to see. We got the lower foothills now. Right there, we'll keep that in place. All right, up here, the yellow is going to hit a much more brownish color, so it's not going to look like grass and greens. It's going to look perhaps more rocky in that distance. Well, let's put color on. I like to do color, then highlight on top of the color. So there's color. Now we're just going to take this brush and just put bright highlights on top of where I have that color. Like this. And the wet on wet technique will leave me a lot of variation in the end result. Some areas are more white, some yellow, some purple. Gives me variation there. Put a slope coming down here. Anywhere I put this now just kind of carves out a highlight. Go like this. There we are. Let's use more black and yellow. This is like a blue-green. Don't love it. Let's do black and yellow for those lower hills. Okay, now my reason in doing this, I actually do have a reason for throwing this in here, because I want to show you how sensitive of a subject to paint, sensitive to change, sensitive, what's the right word? The way it looks easily changes with little differences. So perspective is the subject I'm talking about. Okay, here's my foreground hill. All right, now, nice and level, but what I'm going to do is curve that line just a little bit. We're going to bring it down. Now, I'm only going to go down a little lower than what it was. We're just going down a little bit, but we're going to make it clear that it's curved. It's not going to be just a broken up, messy line. We're going to make it curved for the sake of study. All right. So do you see how the middle of this hill jumps forward? Do you see that perspective change? I just went down that tiny bit and the shape just really jumps Like now we can imagine a little trail like coming down the slope, coming right up. It just feels like that's coming toward us. And so same thing if I did a body of water in there. Uh, we can do a body of water. Let's do it. Let's level this out with some trees. Let's go like this. You got the old line of trees, the property line. We'll do that. We'll put some black in there. We'll get some distant trees. Here we go. We'll just make like a silhouette of some trees going across here. Like this. Okay, I leveled it out. I leveled it out so that we don't see that curve. So now that distant background feels ordinary. I'll just say it feels ordinary. And it's just a very sensitive topic. Let's put a little beach. Okay. Little beach comes across like this. I'm being real careful to make that a level line so that it looks distant. And then I'll show you what happens when I change the slope of that line. I stood up so that I can really stabilize my unsteady hand here. I added white to that orange. I like to do color and then highlight. So my hands are not perfectly steady. I went higher. See how this looks a little further than this. This is further, this is closer, because this is that teensy little bit lower. Watch how much closer this area gets. Watch me bring this area so much closer, way into the foreground with a tiny bit of drop on the distance. We're going to take that white. Right here. There. You see how that whole area just jumps for, well, now I have this sudden drop. I didn't mean to make it like a sudden change right there. Here. There. Now, that comes so much closer. And if I put some little bushes in here, little black dots of bushes. Okay, these are going to be down here just to exaggerate the point, make it easy to observe. We go here, put those along the shore. These bushes jump up to this height, barely different at all, almost the same height in the picture, but it's definitely a more distant bank. So now when I put a body of water on this, let's do that real quick. Let's just do horizontal lines. Let's get our colors. What do we got in there? We got mountains that we want reflected. Let's put some purple and yellow, I guess. Purple. We're just going to grab the colors. We'll get water with just very consistent horizontal strokes on this one. We're just going to go like this. And we'll add some black, make it darker than the source. Okay, to get this to look like water, I'm going to be real careful with the angle, real careful. Water is a level surface for the most part, just practically speaking. Perspective is super sensitive, so I'm going to be very careful about my brush angles in order to have this look like water. It just needs to be a very level surface, because if it looks like a sloping, bending surface, it's not going to look like water. It's not going to have that watery look to it. Once the imagination kind of snaps it into place, oh, it's water. Well, then all is forgiven. Any error is forgiven. Imagination takes over. It's like, oh, I see what that is. So we just have to get to that point where imagination is successfully filling in the blanks. Okay, getting rid of all shapes that look up and down. Then we're going to, good thing, that little tree line is kind of a cheat to be able to get to be able to get water, you know, horizontal lines that have that. Gives you something to reflect is why I'm saying it's like a little cheap. It gives you a little bit. Let's do the Bob Ross reflection. Oh yeah, that's cool. That works too. I loved watching that. Loved watching him do that on a painting. Either way, we just want to see a reflection going down. We want to see the absence of any kind of sloping perspective because it's a sensitive thing. So I'm just showing how slopes have dramatic impact. And by very carefully taking sloping out of that, then I get, and then adding reflection colors, it gives me the look of water. No problem. Okay. Let's restore this little bit of green leaves. There's my yellow and black. This is how I do large projects. I bring an edge to an edge. I don't worry, you see this edge, very messy, overlap it, because the work of going back and fixing edges at the end of a project is not too much work. It's not that bad. So this is my workflow. Instead of trying to do all those little ripples in between leaves, I just destroy the edge of the leaves, come back, repair that edge, because I always have a pattern, a workflow that it was done with. It's not just like hunt and poke with the brush kind of a process, you know. Same with the tree. I can get an edge color. I've got like a gray color on the very edge of that. We'll make my grayish color right here, and then just bring it down, bring it down, put the black in that little light coming out of there, put my orange light. There we go. Touch that up. See, the touch up on an edge is no big deal when you have a familiar pattern. There, now we've got our picture, you know, looking more complete. I just wanted to show the touchiness of slopes. You know, it's just a very touchy thing. A little bit goes a long way. Zoom in so you can see. And see the edge work. Random, wild looking picture, isn't it? What a funny thing. Okay. So, yeah, I see. Thank you, Mavis. Effect of a slight curve in the distance. Thank you for specifying in the distance, because that is exactly what it is. It's on distant things. The perspective is an exponential pattern. You know, the distance represented down here in my picture is exponentially less. What it means, you know, what I mean by, for those of you that don't love the word exponential, you know, just think of the amount of distance that is being represented by a given height on your canvas, doubling each time you go halfway to your horizon. So let's say all right, here I've got 2 meters right here, 2 meters from here to the back side of the tree, 2 meters. Okay, then we're going to go halfway to that horizon. Okay, now that short distance there is 4. It's 4, or no, let's, do I have that right? Yeah. So let's say that there we are going to be at, there's not just 2 meters in that distance, there's 4 of them. Okay, now we cut it in half again to the horizon, we go here. Okay, now in that little distance, that means there would be 8 meters. We double it each time. Now, remembering that math is not important. I'm just showing you that it gets extreme. That's the main thought. It gets extreme. So then we go halfway to the horizon again. And now we're just at something that's just as tall as my finger, but now we're representing 16 instead of 2. That down here, here was 2, here is 16. And then every time we go halfway, it doubles, doubles, doubles till we're representing great distances with tiny little ups and downs when we get near that horizon. That's why it's true that those slopes make huge perceived differences with tiny painted differences. Okay. We're going to call it a day. That's been fun. A lot of fun this morning. Thank you, everybody, for handing in work. So anytime you want to do that, I have a lot of fun poking at your art projects. Hopefully it's not too annoying. I really enjoyed hanging out this morning. We're going to do it again next week. And next week, let's see, today is the 2nd. Guess what? Next week, I'm going to be 46 years old. I have a birthday coming up on the 5th. So I just realized that. Just while I'm sitting here talking, I realized, man, I got a birthday coming in a couple days, a few days. So that's fun. I'll be 46. It's funny when people ask you how old you are. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. It's not as quick of an answer. How old are you? You're trying to remember. Yeah, maybe for a guy, it's similar to when is your anniversary? It gets closer to the same category. Well, on the 5th. All right. Thanks, everybody. Very good hanging out with you. So fun gathering from all different parts of the earth and having some lighthearted fun. I appreciate you being with me. We'll see you next time.